Hi everyone, welcome to Maximum Attack Rallying and to your Thursday dose of rallying chit-chat. Exciting news for British rally fans this week as McCrae has announced that he will contest the full British Rally Championship season in a Dom Buckley Rally Sport run Skoda Fabia RS Rally 2. He will drive the car at the North Wales stages this weekend as a warm-up ready for the first round of the championship. That's the 7 Valley stages in a couple of weeks. You have to say it is a big boost for the British Rally Championship. We will get into why shortly. McRae is also apparently planning some WRC outings this year. Nothing is confirmed, but it would be his debut. I think you have to say that 2025 was a mixed year for the Austro-Scot driver, can we call him that? He contested both BRC and European Championship rallies. He finished 11th in Poland, I think was his best ERC result. Shows he's still learning his craft, I think, doesn't he? He is only 21, still a very young man. He finished second on the Grampian Rally. That was a British Championship round, so I think that showed that there is definitely potential. But I think it was the switch from the Citroen C3 to that Buckley run Skoda that made the real difference. He did 2 events in that car in the latter part of the year. One of those was the Cambrian Rally, the last round of the British Rally Championship, which he won, took his first outright victory in the BRC. That's significant. You know, there are tough stages on that event. It uses a lot of the same roads as you would have found on Rally GB. So a very, very tricky event indeed. So that showed again that there is potential, isn't there? He's part of a long rallying dynasty, isn't he? For good and for bad, probably adds a lot of pressure to the shoulders. His dad, Alastair, he won the British Championship back in 1995. Obviously drove for various teams, including Subaru, Mitsubishi, Hyundai. His uncle Colin, he won the World Championship in the same year, in 1995, of course. Arguably the biggest name in the history of the sport. And even grandfather Jimmy McRae, he is the most successful driver in the history of the British Championship with 5 titles. So there's a lot of pressure there, isn't there? There is a lot of weight hanging on his surname. If he can add his name, of course, to the championship roster, that would be an incredible feat, wouldn't it? But I think you have to say that just his presence in the championship is really significant. The harsh reality is that there have been some highs since the British Championship had its sort of major relaunch 10 years ago. You know, we've had a championship win for Elfyn Evans in 2016. We've had a championship win for Adrian Formeau. William Crichton won the championship last year. But it does seem that the BRC struggles to attract the same level of interest, the same level of attention that other major championships seem to attract, especially given, you know, its long and illustrious history. You know, previous champions include Ari Vatanen, Stig Blomqvist, Roger Clark, Russell Brooks. There are some major names on that trophy. But, you know, really, since the heady days of the kit cars in the late 90s, the BRC has really just struggled to achieve that same level of interest and attention and entries. We don't know the full entry for this year's championship. You know, the entry list for the first round, the 7 Valley stages, is yet to be released. But I think it is safe to say that it is not going to reach the heights of days gone by, and, you know, is certainly not going to be on the same level as championships in Ireland and France, you know, which continue to do incredibly well. You know, at the West Cork Rally, which was the last round of the Irish Tarmac Championship, there were 21 RC2 cars on the entry for that event. That figure is mirrored on this weekend's Rally Le Touquet, which is the next round of the French Championship. I think the more significant thing with the latter of those 2 events is that there are 44 Rally 4 and 35 Rally 5 cars on the entry list for Le Touquet, which is based in Calais. That in itself, you know, that shows the strength of junior rallying in France right now. You know, I have said this before, but I think Motorsport UK and the wider rallying community in the UK really need to ask themselves serious questions about why the BRC seemingly doesn't offer the required level of value, particularly to the many owners of Rally 2 and R5 cars. There are a lot of those cars in the UK competing on national events, regional events, single venue, circuit events. but very few of them seem to be signing up for the BRC. I think we also have to ask why so many people are still choosing to invest six-figure sums in building Mark II Escorts, Darians, Subarus, Mitsubishis, instead of switching to Rally 3, Rally 4, Rally 5 cars. I think, if you look at the British rallying landscape, we complain about the lack of opportunity, we complain about the lack of drivers making it to the ERC and to the WRC, yet at the same time, the BRC isn't offering a pathway to do that. It isn't a significant enough championship to do that, which, if you look back, it was. We had so many drivers that would win the BRC and then go into the WRC, or they would use the BRC as a training ground in between WRC events because it was so competitive and at such a high level. We do, thankfully, have the Stellantis Rally Cup for Rally 4 cars, which is a good thing, but that is effectively piggybacking off what's going on in Ireland and the efforts of Motorsport Ireland and their academy. I'll say this again as well, which I've said before. We have to find a way to get commercial partners and commercial parties interested in supporting young drivers, which is what's happening in Ireland. And we also have to set up a Rally 6-based championship. They are popping up across Europe. Obviously, the one in France, where it all started, is significant. That had its first championship last year. But those cars are now spreading, and that is a much more cost-effective way for youngsters to get into competing. And I believe that the Junior BRC should be based on Rally 6 and not on Rally 4, because the cars are less than €40,000 rather than €70,000. I think we probably need to have a discussion about entry fees. Entry for the 7 Valley stages, I think, was about £1,500, which is not a huge amount of money in the grand scheme of things if you're running a Rally 2 car, but it is significant, especially if you're running in the lower categories. I think we need to have a look at it, don't we? We need to see why clubs are having to charge that amount. I suspect it is nothing to do with the club itself. These clubs are run by volunteers. They are not commercial enterprises. So the reason they are charging high entry fees, I suspect, is out of their control. And if that is down to something like insurance or land access costs, that is where Motorsport UK have to step in and start lobbying to reduce those costs. Because we need fairer pricing. If car clubs are having to spend inordinate amounts of money on insurance, then Motorsport UK needs to be lobbying the insurance companies and saying, well, hold on, this isn't fair, this is killing our sport, we need to find an arrangement, we need to find a way to do this better. That said, I don't want to fall down a negative rabbit hole. The BRC does struggle, and it is problematic. It does make me sad. I'm sure it makes lots of you watching sad, because the British Championship is so important and has been so important over the last few decades, and it would be fantastic to see it back on the high it used to be. But there are still positives. Obviously, McRae joining the championship is a real boost, and that in itself is a good news story, isn't it? So we should celebrate that. We do also have to talk about some of the other drivers, don't we? So in terms of others who are registered, Sam Tuzel was the first to throw his hat into the ring for this season. He's from Jersey. He won the Open Championship in 2025. He's already won the East Riding stages this year. He finished 5th at West Cork in Ireland in a highly competitive field. So he is clearly demonstrating that he is on the up. So it's going to be great to see how he gets on this year. He will be driving a Fiesta Rally 2. I think it will be a brand new or nearly new Fiesta Rally 2. I think he has 2 new cars, one for gravel, one for tarmac, so that's very interesting. Obviously, the other big story is the return of the Castrol MEM Toyota team. I mean, they do so much to support the championship, don't they? The effort put in by Melvin Evans Motorsport to bring those to Toyota Yaris's, to have that backing from Castrol, to bring that iconic livery. It just never stops being cool, does it, seeing Castrol Toyotas competing, and they've generated so much interest, not just in the UK, but around the world. They did Rally Japan with one of the cars a couple of years ago, and the car stayed on in Japan and was put on display. Such is the interest in that iconic livery. And it's not just the fact that the team is still here. Marion Evans will be driving one of the cars as always, but the big story for them is that they have managed to secure the services of 2022 British champion Ozjan Price. He will drive the other GR Yaris Rally 2, so that is very significant indeed. In the juniors, we have some names in there as well. Sam Mason, Riley Chester, and Luke Constantine, so some interesting names in there to follow. Luke has upgraded from an Opel Adam, I believe, so it's going to be interesting to see how he gets on in the Corsa. Those are the big announcements for now. We are going to have to wait and see what happens. I think significantly we'll have to wait and see if M Sport choose to use the championship as a test bed or development arena for some of their young drivers, if anyone will follow in the footsteps of Romet Jurgensen, who was there last year, and obviously Formeau and Evans in the past. Once the Severn Valley entry list comes out, we will see if there is anyone on there. In terms of who I'd bet on for the title, that is a very interesting question indeed. For me, it has to be Price. It has to be Price. He knows what it takes to win a BRC title. He's in a very, very capable car, in a very capable team. He's just consistently fasting. Whatever car he gets in, Price is quick, and for me, he is the clear favourite. Whoever wins, though, I really just want to see a good championship battle, good stories, good drama, because all of that stuff, you know, if the BRC is to recapture past glories and find its way back to the top, that's how it happens, isn't it? Good competition, good stories, good drama. That is what you need. Do let me know in the comments below who you think is going to win, also who you'd like to see joining the championship. Maybe you've seen a name that I've missed. Do give them a mention below. The more the merrier, of course. Also, I think it's worth asking you what you think. How could the BRC get back on top? Let me know what you think about that. What can it do to improve? While you're there, make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons, of course. And other than that, I will just say thank you for watching, and I will see you again in the next video.